If God is first in your life, everything in your life will come into order. Everything. That doesn't mean you won't have tribulation, because Jesus said in this world you'll have tribulation. But then he said, but be excited about it, or be of good cheer, because I've overcome the world. It's okay. I've already taken care of this for you. But you will have tribulation. So I'm not saying you'll never go through a difficulty. I'm not saying that. But if God is not first in your life, then nothing will come into order in your life. And wouldn't you rather go through the tribulation that we're all going to go through, as far as trials and difficulties and all the things we go through, wouldn't you rather go through any difficulty with God being first in your life and everything in order in your life?
Warning. The following content may contain elements that are not suitable for some audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
Another sex scandal rocks another megachurch. Stay tuned as we discuss Robert Morris and his sexual sin.
With each passing day, it seems that another pastor is getting caught up in inappropriate behavior. Many said that, exposure was coming in 2024, and it definitely is. I've been covering it for even years before that. Do I think that it is now accelerating? I do. And the reason for that is because that God says that his judgment starts first in his house, right? The word says judgment starts first in the house of God. And I have said this for years. I have argued with people about it, that God's house is in disarray and it is in need of a massive cleanup. We could also look to scriptures about how it says that be sure your sin will find you out. These are all things that we are now seeing take place in the church. But I also want to point this out, that for as much of this that is now coming out about these pastors, there are still an army of those who would defend these pastors, no matter what, calling anything against them just pure gossip, right? Even if it's clear as day out there what they've done. Because the idol worship of man is also as strong as it's ever been before. It is actually quite sick if you think about it, the way that people put these pastors up on pedestals. It's really not about worshiping Jesus. That's secondary. No, it's about the man. What is the man saying, right? How big is the church? What's the feel-good message this coming Sunday? That's what it's all about for them. So again, we're dealing with two things here. We're dealing with exposure that is out there, but still this strong idol worship of man that refuses to believe that their favorite pastor could do anything wrong at all, even if it involves something as horrible as what we are going to talk about here today when it comes to Pastor Robert Morris of Gateway Church. They attract over 100,000 people weekly between those that actually are in attendance across their 9 campuses and those that watch online. Okay? That's a lot of people. 100,000. It also reminds me of something else the Bible says that in the last days that false Christs and false prophets would rise and they would deceive many. And I've argued that word many is, we're not just talking about a handful here, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking about hundreds of thousands, even in the millions, that will be deceived. They are hypnotized by what these men say. But we're going to talk about what one brave woman, that being Cindy Clemisher, decided to share her story about what happened to her with Robert Morris. And it forced Robert Morris and Gateway Church to release a statement on June 14th about exactly what it was Cindy was claiming here. We're going to get into this. This one really has me fired up. Let's get into this because it's got me heated, guys. I got to be perfectly honest with you, because Robert Morris, somebody who has probably been described as one of the most popular, influential pastors, not just in America, but in the world, has now come under fire after a woman by the name of Cindy Clemishire gave her story to the Wartburg Post about what happened to her at the hands of Morris over 35 years ago. Now, for those that say, oh, it's 35 years ago, who cares about it? No, it's actually very relevant. It's very important that this comes out. And, you know, I've been covering the Tony Evans story as well as of late, and the fact that Evans stepped down from his pulpit because of undisclosed sin. That was his words. You can go back and watch my previous videos on that if you've missed it. And how someone I believe had something on Evans. They knew of this sin that he did in the past, and they probably wanted him to step down. And so all Tony Evans said was that, you know, it was a number of years ago, I did something that I shouldn't have. I didn't use righteous judgment. It wasn't criminal, but it was wrong, and I need to be held accountable for that. And so he's stepping down from his pulpit for, you know, an undisclosed time for, you know, restoration. They love that word, restoration. They're so quick to try to get these pastors back in the pulpit. But we don't know what the sin is, and that's caused a lot of speculation, and people are calling for Tony Evans to reveal exactly what it is that he did. You know, and this is something that, you know, you feel that was so wrong. Why didn't you come out and confess it from the beginning? That's what I've been saying. That's what so many others have been saying as well. And of course, you know, there's those that are, again, the idol worship of man that are propping Tony Evans up on a pedestal, and, you know, they don't really care what he did. They're just praising him for, at least he's coming forward. Yeah, but why wasn't he coming forward in the beginning? That's my question. But again, idol worship, people are blinded. You know, let me say this too. I might be all over with this video, guys, so just bear with me. You know, and you can go watch my story on how I went blind if you want the full story. But let me tell you this. Had I not, and it's something I just came to the realization of not long ago, had I not gone fully blind, to be perfectly honest with you, I don't think that I would have come to, you know, this knowledge that I have now, or the Holy Spirit would have given me discernment to spot these fake pastors the way that I can now. I would not have been immersed in the research and the amount of studying that I do into these matters now. And of course, you know, doing these videos on my platform as part of my ministry. But I don't think it ever would have happened. And I was somebody that always, you know, kind of too, it was idol worship of man for me. You know, there was even allegations against a former pastor of mine. And I didn't want to believe them. You know, I thought he was cool, he was different, and I didn't want to believe it. And it was just, you know, you hear those scriptures, touch not my anointed, and you run with that because you think that someone that calls himself a pastor, you're almost intimidated in a way that, oh my gosh, if I say anything, like I even remotely suggest they did something wrong, then, I mean, God's going to do something to punish me. I mean, it's terrible the way that some of these pastors can just invoke fear into you. And so I came from that. So you guys got to understand that when I talk about these things, I'm talking from a position of experience as somebody who dealt with this. And I came out of it. And I want to help others come out of it as well that have been just suckered into these cults that pose as churches. It does an incredible amount of damage to somebody. And so I want to say that. So if there was ever a good reason for me to lose my sight, physical sight, what it did was it helped me to gain spiritual sight that maybe was very weak at the time when maybe my physical sight was strong. So I want to say that. Now, let me talk about Robert Morris, because you got this brave woman here, Cindy, who has come out now with this story, and she gave the story again to the Wartburg Post. She talks about how this was back when Robert Morris was first starting off. He was a young pastor. He was only in his early 20s at the time. He was married to his wife Debbie by that point, though, and they had their young son Josh. And Cindy talks about how, you know, the Morris family would come and stay with her family, for periods of time. And this is also when Robert Morris was associated with Shady Grove Church. And eventually he became the pastor of Shady Grove Church. But Cindy details that one night, it was Christmas night, December 25th, 1982. She was in a car with Robert Morris. And he told her that he wanted her to come and visit him at his room later on that evening. Now you have to understand, Cindy was only 12, okay, at the time that this started. And Cindy goes on to say that, she didn't think nothing of it. You're innocent. You're only like 12, okay? And she didn't think that there was anything weird with this. So she goes and, because she had known the Morris family, and she had even said in her story that she felt that they were safe to be around and she trusted them, right? Her family, her father trusted them. So she thinks nothing of it. She goes and visits Robert, and this is where the inappropriate behavior took place. It was everything that you could think of except, the whole deed, if you know what I mean. Remember, she's only 12, okay? And she claims that Robert Morris told her that she could never tell anybody about what was happening. How many times have we heard that before from pastors that have been caught up in this inappropriate behavior, right? How many times? Don't tell anybody, because if you do, it will ruin everything. It will ruin my ministry. Don't tell anybody about it. And they don't, because they're afraid. And they don't want to cause trouble. They don't want to get the person in trouble, right? These are young, impressionable minds. And these pastors take advantage of their positions, and they do these things repeatedly. Oh, and by the way, this was not, I told y'all I'm fired up today. This was not a one-time thing. This occurred over a period of 4.5 years with Cindy. 4.5 years. And this guy was pastoring at the time. Worked his way up to pastor at Shady Grove. Was friends with Cindy's father. But all the while, when he wasn't up on the stage at the pulpit deceiving people every single week, he was continuing to do these things with Cindy inappropriately. It lasted all the way until Cindy was 16 years old. Even he tried, and I said he did everything but, the whole deal, if you know what I mean. But Cindy claims that at one point he actually did try to do the whole thing in another vehicle that they were in together. And he also allegedly told his wife that the time that he was spent with Cindy was for counseling her. Some kind of counseling there, right, Robert Morris? Interesting, right? Well, finally one day, Cindy decided to tell a close friend about what had been going on. Remember, this was 4.5 years this had been happening, and started when she was only 12. Her friend convinced her to finally tell her family about this and other church leaders, and Cindy did, thankfully. When her father found out about this, he was reportedly furious and told Morris that if he didn't get out of ministry, he was going to be calling the police. I looking back on this story now, I wish he did call the police, because now with statute of limitations, there's nothing that they can do. And this happened across 2 states, both in Texas and in Oklahoma. Now, Morris did step away from ministry for a time, but again, this was not because of anything that he confessed to doing. It was only because Cindy had told somebody, and it was in the spring of 1987, that Morris had stepped away from ministry for 2 years, okay? Until spring of 1989. Now, Morris claims that, because I'm going to tell you his statement here in a second after, they got Cindy's story here and also what the church said. But Morris claims that he submitted to elders and other church leaders to, here we go again with this, the R word, guys, restoration for 2 years that involved counseling, that involved other various forms of therapy, but that by spring of 1989, now this is according to Robert Morris, he claims that he received the blessing from Cindy's father and other church leaders to get back into ministry again. Cindy is saying otherwise. She said that, did my father forgive? Did I forgive? Yes, because we are called to forgive. But in no way, she says, did my father ever give him his blessing for him to return to ministry. Cindy believes that people like Morris should have never been restored back to ministry, especially when you are dealing with inappropriate behavior of little ones. And I 100% totally agree with that. This is a position that I take on every single case I report of this sort of shenanigans that are happening in the church with these pastors. Every single time. Now, I'm going to get you to more of Cindy in just a second, but let me tell you what Robert Morris said, because again, this was a story that Cindy gave to the Wartburg Post on June 14th. Now Morris has responded, and he has claimed that, yes, there was inappropriate behavior that was going on with him, but he said, now he doesn't mention Cindy by name in the statement. He just says a young lady from over 35 years ago, where Morris again talks about, I did everything except the whole thing with her. And he says, I submitted to restoration process. I haven't had a moment that wasn't pure since then. I don't know about that. We'll get back to that in a second as far as what Cindy says. And he says, again, he's deeply sorry, and he's moved on from that. Yeah, I'm sure he's moved on from that. But what about Cindy? I'll more on that too in a second. But Cindy clapped back at this and said that she was absolutely horrified by the fact that Robert Morris had called her a young lady. She was not a young lady, okay? She was 12. You want to call that a young lady? Cindy doesn't think so. Not at all. And by the way, there are certain, parts of this story that I can't talk about on this platform for obvious reasons, but I will have the full post from the workbook post about Cindy's story. It's going to be up on my Patreon, and I'm including it over there just because of the nature of what is being discussed. It's going to be a better platform for me to include that information. So if you want to read it in full, you can go over to patreon.com/notbysitenews. It will be up for you there.
Hello friends, I hope you're enjoying today's program. If it's a blessing to you, I would encourage you to like the video, to comment on it, and most importantly, to subscribe to my YouTube channel, share these videos. We want to get the message of the true truth of the true gospel out there, and the more you like my videos and comment on them and subscribe, then that helps the algorithm. Again, I pray that today's show has been a blessing to you, and we're going to get right back into it. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Let's get back into today's program. Hello friends, we're offering a special book, Christian Doctrines from an Arminian perspective. I know a lot of you request me of the question, where can I get a good book on doctrines? Well, I've finished this one, and I cover every doctrine, every major doctrine in Christianity. The doctrine of God, the doctrine of Jesus Christ, the doctrine of the Holy Spirit, the doctrine of the Scriptures, the doctrine of man, the doctrine of salvation, the doctrine of man's free will, the doctrine of perseverance, the doctrine of heaven, the doctrine of hell, the doctrine of sanctification, the doctrine of demons, the doctrine of Satan, the doctrine of evangelism and global missions, the millennial reign. And I have one chapter that I've dedicated to all the false doctrines in the world today, the major ones. So be sure to avail yourself of this special offer. And I'm not charging anything for this. I am accepting any size donation or love offering. And if you can't afford it, then I will get this ebook. It's an ebook. It's not a paperback book. It's an ebook that I will email to you. It's about nearly 300 pages long. And so it's a book on all the fundamental doctrines of Christianity. Make sure and order your copy of this today. Now let's get back into the program.
Now, Cindy also disclosed a lot more about this. She claimed that in 2005, now you got to understand, remember, Robert Morris has a lot of money, right? 100,000 people at the services, 9 campuses every single week, that and online. In 2005, Cindy had put a lawsuit out against Robert Morris and Gateway Church. Now, this wasn't her trying to get money. She made this very clear. It wasn't about money. She simply wanted, help in paying for all of the counseling bills that she had accumulated over the years. And she was seeking $50,000 from Robert Morris and Gateway Church, okay? But what did they say in response? Robert Morris lawyers claimed that, well, Cindy was the one that was being flirtatious throughout this entire process. So because of that, we don't really see it right to give her $50,000. But here's what we will do, because they're so kind, right? Robert Morris and his church, good people. They offer Cindy $25,000. So we'll give you half, but not just that. There's a little bit more to it. we'll give you $25,000, but we're going to want you to sign an NDA to go along with that so you don't talk about this in the future. Of course, an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement. To Cindy's credit, she refused to take that deal, would not sign an NDA. That's why she's speaking up today. But again, this goes to show you, Robert Morris was so remorseful about what he did, right? He repented, he got restoration for 2 years and has been pure ever since. And with all the money that his little cult brings in, he couldn't give this woman $50,000 to help with her counseling bills and all the therapy that she was receiving. No, I'll give you $25 and make you sign an NDA. Why do you think that they wanted the NDA in there? Because they did not want this getting out there to more people. Because if it does, it affects the money, it affects the pocketbook, it affects the church. Can I get any amens from those that are listening or watching to me in the back about this? Okay? I told you I'm fired up about this. Now, they didn't respond to Cindy's claims, with, the supposed settlement here with the NDA and all of that. But the church did release a statement, that being Gateway Church. Now, they sent this to all of their other church leaders and elders and church staff because they wanted to try to get ahead of this and try to do some damage control. Now, they've instructed all those in the church that if anybody asks you about this, okay, this including people, I'm assuming the people at the church at Gateway, if anybody approaches you and asks you questions about Cindy and her story, please direct them to a campus pastor for them to give them more information about this, okay? And if anybody in the media comes around asking about this, well, they've directed them to one of the other, spokespersons at the church that handles media. So again, this is about controlling a narrative here. And again, they're trying to get ahead of this because they know that, oh boy, look, with pastors the way they're being called out these days, again, we can't have this affect the money at the end of the day. So again, they are trying to do some damage control. Again, direct people to a campus pastor. Are they going to actually, discuss this during Sunday services? Of course they're not going to. But even if they did mention something about it, would probably be so vague. And they would just move on very, very quickly. I highly doubt that they're going to sit there and tell Cindy's story from the pulpit about, what was happening to her and Robert Morris when, again, he was starting off as a young pastor. Let me bring something else up that's important here because this is something else Cindy divulged, that it was Robert Morris's own wife, Debbie, who even blamed Cindy for what happened to her. Even saying that she called Cindy on the phone one day and said that I am finally at a place now where I can forgive you for what you did. Excuse me? Forgive her for what she did? What did she do? Debbie, she was 12. Okay? She was 12. It was her fault because the lawyers said that Cindy was being flirtatious with the pastor at age 12. Obviously, you were drinking the Kool-Aid, the same Kool-Aid that Robert was given to Cindy was given to you too when he told you about how, well, I was just counseling Cindy. Sure you were. Sure you were. Just a counseling session. Because it makes sense for a pastor to be counseling, a young female without the presence of their significant other or spouse there with them. This is the kind of stuff, ladies and gentlemen, that just irks me to no end that goes on in these cults. All the while, they take the money in every single week. They use the prosperity gospel on you to try and tell you that God will do wonderful things for you. He'll bless you financially. He'll give you healing in your body if you just continue to give to our ministry. Health and wealth and health and wealth. I heard it my whole life. I was sucked into that for so long. Thank God I came out of it. I know a lot of others haven't. Should Robert Morris step out of the pulpit completely? 100% yes. Will he? No, I don't think so. Even with this story coming out. This man's got a lot of power, a lot of influence, and again, he's going to use the fact that, well, I dealt with this a long time ago, over 35 years ago. Why would I have to deal with anything with it now? Let me tell you something else about what Cindy said, because she doesn't believe she's the only one. She believes there are more that have yet to come out and share their story about what happened to them with Robert Morris. And you want to know something else? Robert Morris, and this is all going to be in the link that I'm going to include on my Patreon. Robert Morris said in a sermon, that clip will be in there too, before he got saved, about how he struggled quite a bit when it came to inappropriate behavior, if you know what I mean. Okay? So obviously, that inappropriate behavior carried with him after he was saved. Now, what's interesting about that is that when you are saved, you become a new creation in Christ. I talk all the time about repenting of your sin, right? And living, and keeping a repentant heart. But it's one thing if you slip up once, but when it happens repeatedly for 4.5 years while you are still pastoring, that is a pattern of a wolf, ladies and gentlemen. A pattern of a wolf. This was not when Robert Morris was not yet saved when this happened to Cindy. This was after he was saved. And when he was preaching as a young pastor. But I'm sure there's still going to be people out there that are singing the praises of Robert Morris and saying, this is just gossip and rumors and blah, 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 blah. It's sad. It is sad. But that is how people think. And they will continue to put these pastors up on a pedestal no matter what it is that they do. They will continue to be duped every single week by their deceptive, blasphemous prosperity gospel. They'll think nothing of it. Nothing of it at all. But I'm the one who will be deemed upon as wrong for daring to want to hold pastors accountable, for daring to speak out for victims like Cindy, who took a very long time to realize what it was that happened to them. But she's just simply dismissed. Now, here's $25,000 we'll give you with an NDA. Isn't it interesting that Robert Morris has lied about getting the blessing from Cindy's father to return back to ministry? You know what Cindy said about that? She said that her father wanted to basically tear Robert Morris apart limb from limb. Like any good father would want to do when something like that was happening to their daughter. Good for her father, by the way, for saying that. Can you be restored to Christ? Yes, but it does not mean that you should be occupying a pulpit. But you know what happened? Robert Morris saw an opportunity to get a lot of money, built a big church, one of the most influential churches in the entire country. You think that he was going to do the right thing and step away, knowing that his patterns of a wolf have been going on for as long as they were? And again, there may be even more that come out yet. Of course, he wasn't going to step away. It was too good. It was too tempting for him to resist all of that. Morris was also the same guy that, propped up Mark Driscoll when he had his fall from Mars Hill. You had Morris that was going around and was, basically saying, oh, it's just the media that had it out for Mark Driscoll, right? It wasn't Mark Driscoll's fault that his church at Mars Hill fell apart because of his bullying and his intimidation and the way that he was with his leadership. No, it's the media's fault. This guy has a history of propping up wolves because he is one. Wolves, birds of a feather flock together. Wolves, they travel in packs. That's what this is with Robert Morris. That's how he operates. He even famously gave a sermon at a Willow Creek church. And this was the one, I believe, in Chicago at the time. I talked about this in a video then, several years ago. Willow Creek has since shuttered its Chicago campus, by the way. But they invited Robert Morris there to basically give this message about tithing and say that if God, it was like this tithe challenge that he presented. And he was telling people that if God did not double or triple your income of what it is that you're sowing, then he would give them their money back. I guess after, a certain period of time. I think it was like a year, he said. Money back guarantee, Robert Morris, because he apparently said the same message to his Gateway Church as well. Again, it all comes back down to the money at the end of the day. I've said a lot here, but I had to. We had to get this out. We had to talk about it because this exposure needs to happen. God bless Cindy for sharing her story. And as far as Robert Morris goes and Gateway Church, Robert needs to do the right thing. He needs to completely step away from ministry altogether. If he really cares about his relationship with the Lord, he'll do it. But will he give up the money? I don't think so. Gateway Church elders should hold him accountable as well, but they're not going to either. I want to hear from you on this, though. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section about this.
It appears to me, ladies and gentlemen, after watching this video and all of 2024, it's been one scandal after another. T.D. Jakes, and I could name some more. God is judging the church. The church is completely backslidden, full of greed, money lovers, sheep fleecers, idolaters. Jesus Christ, the true Jesus, is no longer mentioned, served, or worshiped. Avoid Robert Morris. I've been teaching against this man due to his false doctrine for years. And now this sex scandal has hit the scene. Avoid him because he is a false teacher. He will lead you away from the true gospel and the true Lord Jesus Christ. Thank you for being with me on today's program.